Good morning. We're making our way through Luke's Gospel at the moment, and today we come to chapter 6, verses 1 to 11. They seem to me to be very apt for our times. We have two stories about rules and whether they are good rules. Can they ever be broken with a clear conscience? In order not to go on too long, I hope you won't mind if I just use the first of the stories this morning for my reflection. But let's hear the reading first, and then we can ponder it a bit. Well, that's to say, I will now, and you may like to think about it over the coming days.
One Sabbath, while Jesus was going through the cornfields, his disciples plucked some heads of grain, rubbed them in their hands, and ate them. But some of the Pharisees said, "Why are you doing what is not lawful on the Sabbath?" Jesus answered, "Have you not read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He entered the house of God and took and ate the bread of the presence, which it is not lawful for any but the priests to eat, and gave some to his companions." Then he said to them, "The Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath." On another Sabbath he entered the synagogue and taught, and there was a man there whose right hand was withered. The scribes and the Pharisees watched him to see whether he would cure on the Sabbath, so that they might find an accusation against him. Even though he knew what they were thinking, he said to the man who had the withered hand, "Come and stand here." He got up and stood there. Then Jesus said to them, "I ask you, is it lawful to do good or to do harm on the Sabbath? To save life or to destroy it?" After looking around at all of them, he said to him, "Stretch out your hand." He did so, and his hand was restored. But they were filled with fury and discussed with one another what they might do to Jesus.
The reason I said these two entirely separate stories were very apt for now is because for the last 7 weeks or more, we as a populace have been subject to more rules and regulations than at any time since the war, and I seem to think that some experts have said that civil liberties have never in modern times been as restricted as they have been since March. How does our position compare with that of the Jews of Palestine in the first century? Is Jesus saying that rules are made to be broken? Well, yes and no, I suppose. In chapter 20 of Luke, we find Jesus telling people to pay their taxes. Although he didn't elaborate on that advice, we know that taxes pay for things from which we all benefit. We're also aware, of course, that in Jesus' time, tax collectors collected far more than they were supposed to and creamed off a sizable slice for themselves. The Zacchaeus story comes to mind. But Roman taxes also paid for Roman roads, and it was in considerable measure because of them that the gospel spread as far as Italy and Spain within 50 years of Christ's death. Security, commerce, and religion travel the same roads. Well, what about those rules that Jesus and his disciples broke? Picking ears of wheat while walking through a wheat field on the Sabbath broke two rules simultaneously. Walking more than a Sabbath day's journey, which I think was about 2/3 of a mile, 2,000 cubits to be precise, I know we've all got a cubit tape measure somewhere in the shed, was the first one, since I think the rule was designed to allow a person to walk from their house to the synagogue to worship. All other travelling over land was prohibited. Harvesting by picking an ear of wheat, which fell under the heading of work, was the second rule that the disciples broke. To be fair to the Pharisees, they were insisting on the application of the fourth commandment, not one of the rather more curious ones which we imagine were written by lawgivers much later, but in Jewish belief, and I have to say in Christian doctrine too, a direct instruction from God himself. Remember how it goes? "Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labour and do all your work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall do no work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. It's quite difficult to square that specific word of God with the way in which Jesus tells the Pharisees that he's quite happy with what his disciples are doing. The commandment about the Sabbath was intended not to be a burden, but precisely the opposite, to ensure that every single person, master, servant or slave, had a day of rest every seventh day. How enlightened! Very much the provision made by a loving God. What Jesus means is that rules are all very well, but human need, such as hunger, overrides them sometimes. And there is a precedent going back 1,000 years, says Jesus, to justify what the disciples did, because they were hungry. Human need justifies bending or breaking the rules, he seems to be saying. And that's something we've been grappling with ever since. Rules exist for people's benefit, not to make their lives impossible. And this is the week in which our government is tentatively starting to relax some of the rules governing our behaviour outside our own homes, rules designed to keep us free from infection as far as possible. There have been clear indications that some people have already decided that 2 months of lockdown are enough, and they're starting to ignore rules which continue to insist on social distancing and on limiting encounters with people who are not members of our household to one single person. Can we blame them? It's certainly an understandable point of view. Now, the Pharisees were totally inflexible in their application of Jewish law. Jesus, on the other hand, could see when laws worked to the detriment of the people they were designed to help and protect. They were being applied indiscriminately. I think the rules we are subject to currently are also designed to help and protect us, and they are flexible in that they can be and are modified regularly to ensure that they're still doing their job, but are proportionate to need. Rules are, to adapt Jesus' pronouncement, made for human beings, and not human beings for the rules. As Christians, we can set an example to others by patiently sticking to the rules and praying that things will improve fast enough for our patience not to be taxed for too long. Well, those are my thoughts. I wonder what yours are. Perhaps you can discuss them over lunch or dinner. That's it then for this week. You know that on Sunday we will yet again be having a family service from St Mark's on Zoom, and you can tune into that and be a part of it by clicking on the link that you'll get on your email. And I hope very much that we shall all see one another then. Have a good Saturday and a good weekend. God bless you and goodbye for now.